Hey, you know that awkward moment when your intro meeting in sales ends and you're not sure if it went great, bad, or indifferent, or if you'll even hear from that client again? Yes, we all have. And today we are fixing that. So, welcome back to Owning the Goal, the show where we dive deep into what it really takes to build, grow, and own your success, both in business and in life. I'm your host, Brian McFarland, and today we're talking about one of the most critical moments in any sales process, the intro meeting. Joining me today is Andrew Barbuto, sales expert and author of the best-selling book, Top Sales Producer, and the supplemental workbook guide. Um, if you've ever wondered how to turn those first conversations with prospects into powerful long-term relationships, this is the episode for you. Andrew's also written Sales Marathon, which I've just finished myself, and I'll talk about that book in a minute. But Andrew, it is so great to have you on the show. This is episode number 4. So welcome back. How have you been personally?
Good. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And as you just told us off air, I said, where did that great sales marathon or study or writing come from? And it just popped into your brain. And when did you write it?
I wrote it on the flight to a conference that I went to last week in Arizona. So I literally just wrote I started writing when I got on the flight and it ended when we landed. So uh, it definitely made it go faster.
Sure. Well, it's a great piece of content. I'd encourage our listeners to get it. It's available on Kindle. It's a brief read, but it's super inspiring, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But let's dive right in. So, per Andrew's suggestion and following along with his books, heading into chapter 4, it is executing the actual intro meeting, which I've always looked at as the Super Bowl. So I want to really have you establish the importance of this meeting and sort of the high level philosophy that you have in the book that you approach each and every first meeting that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first meeting is super important. It's so important for a number of reasons. The first and most important reason is the fact that it is extremely difficult to get these meetings. And so, you only get a certain amount, how much it takes to actually get them on the calendar. And so you need to capitalize on it when you do. And so, basically you get one shot for the most part, right? To make a great first impression. And so you need to be able to execute your meetings when you get the opportunity to speak to a qualified prospect. Now, not every prospect that you speak to is going to be a great fit. Not everyone is going to be qualified. A lot of the work that goes into finding the people that are occur before the meeting starts. So hopefully that is the case that they are good fit for your solution. That was one of the things that I learned early in my career, where I would just set up as many meetings as possible. And some of them just ended up not being qualified. Some of them were salespeople that are trying to sell to me. And you learn that pretty quickly early in the meeting. So nowadays, I definitely spend more time up front to make sure that I'm only speaking to people that we can actually help. And then it's all about executing the meeting when you get into it. And so I break down some best practices that have worked for me. I've refined my approach over the course of my career to see what works, how to start out the meeting well, how to position your solution, and then importantly, how to set up next steps. I'm looking forward to covering that today.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And I'm deep in chapters 4 and 5 where you spend so much time. So in Top Sales Producer, you talk about first off heading into the meeting. You've secured the meeting, which is a great feeling. So now preparation is part of step 5. So can you walk us through at a high level what does your preparation look like before you actually head into that?
Yeah. So, uh, as far as how I handle my preparation, I try to gather as much information as I possibly can about who I'm speaking to before I ever talk to them. And then I try to actually put together a game plan ahead of time. Things like what I find from my research, like value, questions I want to ask, next steps, all of that. And so, how I actually approach the preparation is I look at a few different places. The first one is usually my CRM. So I'll go in there and see if there's been any history between our companies prior to this engagement. If there is, I will review all notes, see who they spoke to, when that was, what they spoke about. And you can usually get a lot of information about if there was a prior engagement, why it didn't materialize, or maybe you guys worked together in the past, maybe you didn't, what have you. You can get a lot of information about like qualifications, and hopefully that they've put in notes about the conversation, so that way you can get those insights that you can't really get until you speak to the person. And so that kind of gets you ahead, and then you can reference those insights at the top of your meeting if there was a prior engagement, in order to build immediate credibility and to transition yourself from just another vendor to somebody who is a little bit of a warmer partner potential. Again, it gives you more credibility. From there, I look at the client's LinkedIn page, the person I'm actually speaking to. I'll read their description. I'll look at their job history. I'll look at anything they've posted. Anything that I can find, because what it's going to do is gives you some insight into the type of person that you're going to be speaking to, what their personality is like, what is their experience level, what is their job requirements. All of that is vitally important to really get ahead and know what they might care about. Uh, from there, you want to look at the prospect's LinkedIn page. So there's a blurb in there about, how they describe themselves. What are their core services? Then you can look at their actual employees and see, all right, is the person I'm speaking to likely the decision maker? What are they? Who else might need to be involved in this discussion as a follow up? And also, you can get some basic information like the size of the company, location of the company, whether they have multiple markets. And also, you can get a lot of information based on what they're posting, the actual company is posting on LinkedIn, because they're going to post about their priorities. So once I'm done with that, I'll then take a trip to their website. And from there, you can get a whole other host of information about the company. As I'm going about this, I'm writing down notes on what I think that will be able to help them, notes on the type of company they are, the needs that they likely have, the type of customers they may have, as well as questions that I think of as I'm going about my research, and I wasn't able to find from my research that I think will be important. And the reason why I'm doing that is really twofold. One is to qualify them. I want to understand, is this actually a viable opportunity? Does this prospect look like our best customers? What is the size of the opportunity? And what type of potential partnership model might make sense for them based on things such as what are the partnerships that are listed on their website? Sometimes they list their tech stack. They're usually their executive team, their positioning, their services. All of that information is really important. And what you can get from that, if you want to do a bonus one, you can type in their name on Google and you could see any articles that were posted about them. If they're a public company, you can obviously read their earnings report. You can get a lot of information from that. What is their CEO saying? But, the amount of information that you can actually gather about somebody digitally prior to ever meeting them is really incredible. And then why you want to do that is so that way you come in with a game plan, and a lot of the information that you may have asked them during the meeting, you don't have to, because you can find it out beforehand. And it kind of starts the game at like the 20-yard line, as opposed to having to start at the starting point. And then you ask those questions you weren't able to find up front. So that way, you can fill the gaps that you missed. And now you're all the way at a point where really it's like you're just, because so much of the discovery phase occurs at the start of the meeting, right? And so by gathering that information, you could just have them confirm it. Then what's most important about the sales meeting, and we'll talk about this, is the flexibility. So pivoting based on what you actually learn in the meeting from your prospect.
Sure, sure. And you inspired me. I was telling you this before we started this. So from the time we had coffee in at Long Beach Island, you inspired me, much like you were in. If you haven't read Daniel's Sales Marathon book, I encourage you to, because you were Daniel to my Eric to a degree. And Daniel winds up hiring Eric at the end. So you'll know I'm giving a shout out to Andrew, because you gave me so much inspiration to dive so much deeper into who I'm calling on, their company and whatnot. Seems like master of the obvious. But just yesterday, uh, fortuitous that it's happening before I'm having this discussion with you. I just had a discussion with our AI expert, David Berkowitz. We got told from our management to use a certain prompt that had been written with the AI people inside. And it was so specific to getting incredible output that I made it a categorical one about colleges who would be ripe targets in my states for online MBAs. I had no idea how much money was spent marketing wise to attract online MBAs to this school. And Andrew, I have to tell you, I got so specific thanks to the inspiration from you of the questions to ask. And I gave GPT all of what you just said. It took 4 minutes to process it out. And what you just said without ChatGPT would have take probably an hour per account to do it right. And that's a lot, right? In 4 minutes, I got a whole category and I got the top 25 schools in my states and reached out to all 25 schools yesterday, and 10 have gotten back to me already.
That's
It helped
awesome.
me write the emails, the subject lines, everything. I understood it. So to your point, now I'm a big fan of writing handwritten notes. So when I go into that meeting, I would open this and say, well, Andrew, to build, you have to, we talk about building a camaraderie, but then I take out 3 pages of notes and say, I'm just going to be honest here. I did a deep dive with AI on you and your company and whatnot, and I've really learned a lot. However, I'd like you to tell me what your pain points are, because I'm sure I've missed something here. And I've been doing this now, and this is now the benchmark for how you should be prepared. So it's so amazing. So when you told me the preparation you do the first time, I was like, this is like an hour an account, man. And now I look and I'm like, this is like 5 minutes. And then you just have to spend time reading it. So are you using AI to solve for that?
Yeah. So yes, I will use AI to prepare for meetings. The way that AI works, ChatGPT works, is it scrapes the internet for any information that it can find, and then it organizes that information for you, right? So you can save a lot of time by, instead of doing all the steps that I had just mentioned, just like asking ChatGPT to provide you with a template for preparing for the person that you are going to speak to. You can, you know, what you can do is all the information that you gathered during that preparation phase, you could just paste it into ChatGPT so that way it has more context, because it's not going to be able to pick up information on like your previous conversations, right? It's not going to be able to at times be able to get the description of that person that you're speaking to's LinkedIn, right? So it only has access to so much information. And that's because of limitations with some of the gaps in how it can access information. So it could be a good way to supplement it. Uh, but again, there's going to be some limitations if there's that information is not publicly available. So that's why I try to use a combination of the two, where I first explore all the resources I had already mentioned, uh, and then if I still want some like final preparation, or if I wanted to organize my thoughts, I'll just paste it and ask it to basically provide me with a preparation guide that I can use to refresh my memory going into the meeting.
Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful. So I want to pivot a little bit here. So you're a really trustworthy person. I got that from the first time we spoke to the first time we met, and for into this conversation. So let's make the call completely cold. Your company's never done business with this person before, nor the company. So this is the hardest one to build, right? Because there's you don't have nothing to work with. So
Hmm.
how do you earn that trust when
Hmm.
you walk into the room and get that going with the person?
Yeah, so I think it's all about how you approach your meetings. At the start of my career, I would be doing all the research that I talked about to try to develop basically a sales pitch, and to try to sell this person, like try to persuade them to choose us, that find all the ways that we can help them, etc. And I think that comes off in your meetings, right? You come off as salesy. It's obvious that you are trying to sell that person. When you go, and so I think that can cause some hesitancy on the part of the prospect. And so I changed my mentality pretty early on in my career to go from, hey, let me try to sell these people to let me try to find ways to help these people. And that I think that just change of mentality really changes the entire approach. When I go into a meeting, I'm not going in to be like, all right, let me try to sell this person. I'm going in to find out if we can help them first and foremost. And so all of the questions that I'm asking because I'm curious to uncover whether they're actually qualified, and to find the information to see if they do have any needs that we can help with, any challenges. You just come off as much more genuine when you're actually asking because you're curious, as opposed to just asking to try to sell. So that's first and foremost, which is just the approach that you take in your meeting and the mentality that you have going into it. That will be reflected to the person that you're speaking to. There's a difference, and you can tell. The other thing is listening. So when I ask a question, I'm actively listening to your answer. I'm not listening to respond. I'm listening because I'm actually curious to understand your needs, right? So that's another thing, by actually asking a question, good questions, the questions that you ask are clearly because you're trying to understand the world. You're asking for a reason, and then you're genuinely interested in the answer, not to just try to sell, not to respond, but actually because you want to know. You want to know about them and whether you can help. So that's number two, which is like listening more than speaking. And then the third part is with respect to, like, building trust. I think it's just being very transparent and honest with that person. You're not going to be able to help everybody, right? Nobody can. And you shouldn't try. You shouldn't try to sell everybody you speak to if they're not qualified. So the way that you approach it in order to actually come off genuine is, okay, I'm now going in with research. I took the time because I care. I'm now going to ask you questions to fill the gaps, to see if we can help. When you speak, I'm going to listen and try to understand for my own knowledge. And then based on that assessment, we're either going to be able to help or not. And if the answer is that we can't help, then, there's no point in trying to force it. But if you can, then you're presenting your solution to solve a problem, as opposed to try to convince them to buy. So it's finding solutions to their problems, and therefore it's not like it changes the whole dynamic between you and the person that you're speaking to. It becomes much more like a conversation than a presentation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And in true, anyone who's listened to the show in general, or has listened to the episodes with Andrew and I, we are both very authentic and vulnerable people. So we share the things we do well, and then we do the things we could have done better. And I, for one, can tell you, even in my current job, and my boss knows this because we discussed this, we had a very big sales call with a Fortune 500 company, a very senior woman who was really kind to give us her time. We had an hour. I had a subject matter expert with me, and we listened. The person had called the meeting. The potential client had called the meeting. We mostly spoke, mostly the subject matter expert, and that's what the client wanted, because they wanted to learn. They weren't in a position where they wanted to buy, so therefore they weren't in a position to being sold. Even with my almost 40 years of experience, Andrew, I made the critical mistake, very much like Eric in your book, where at the 51st minute, I oddly said the woman's name, and I said, is there anything we can help you out with in fourth quarter? And it was like the train came off the tracks. We had this incredible conversation. We certainly were going to have more, and we hopefully still will. But she turned, and her response was, well, you always know who's the salesperson in the room. That was
That's funny.
that was a knife in the heart. And it was such to be honest, it was a rookie mistake. You don't do that. She wasn't going to buy anything, right? What was the point of the question? It was very low reward, and it was extremely high risk. I wish I could have done it over again. I sent her an apology note the next day, and I will apologize and make a joke of it when I see her in the future. But I bring that up because there's the danger of we had trust built, and I kind of hurt it, at the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, I, not to push back, but I think that I don't necessarily think that you did anything wrong. At the end of the day, our job is to try to partner with these people. I think it all has to do with the context of the meeting. Like, what was the meeting? Like, what was the expectation going into it? Did they make it very clear, like, hey, we just want to learn about what you do? And that was set up at the outset. If so, then yeah, by trying to sell when they've made it clear they're not in market, then yeah, you could turn them off. If it weren't the case and it was just from the conversation, they maybe there was that wasn't that expectation wasn't set ahead of time, and you're having a conversation and it's going well, and it becomes clear that they have needs that you can help with, then even if it appears that they're not in market, like, or if they're giving signals that like maybe that, you know, the whole point of the conversation is to find out if you can help. So I don't necessarily think you did anything wrong by asking them, hey, is there anything that you might need help with? But again, it all has to do with how the meeting was set up to begin with. What was the context of the meeting, the purpose of the meeting? And if it was established ahead of time that like this, there's no potential partnership opportunities here. I'm taking this meeting just to learn what you do. And then you try to sell, then yeah, I could imagine that would turn them off.
Yeah, and that was the case. I don't
Okay.
get a pass. I don't get a pass.
Okay.
But I come out of meetings much like you do, and really give a self-evaluation quickly. We're both professional enough to know what we could have done better. And that was the first thing I said. I said, I'm kicking myself. I should have never asked her. That was so out of context, and it had been set to be a learning session, and it will be okay because I'll fix it,
Mhm.
but we'll get there. So let's to because I think your point of the next topic, which kind of flowed through your book, is the critical area where so many people collapse, and it is you've had this meeting, you're not sure how it went, and so now it's time to follow up. So we both know, and your book has demonstrated very clearly, this is where the real sale happens.
Mhm.
So share with, if you will, what's really worked for you and what our listeners, and we're all selling something, what is after that first meeting? What's really going to drive it?
Yeah. So I would say that the success, yeah, the follow up, what goes on after that initial meeting is the real sale. You could have the best meeting in the world, but it was still a meeting. What really matters are the people that follow through, that go the extra mile to advance the deal, to provide value, to actually move the deal throughout the sales cycle. And when a deal, again, you could have the best meeting ever. They could be super impressed. They could sound like they're ready to buy. But if you don't follow through enough and you don't, like, the deal will stall, and they're most likely not going to go out of their way to move the deal forward. So it's still on you to progress that deal and to advance it. What I would say is that process starts before that first meeting ends, though. And what I mean by that is that when you, before the meeting ends, the try to get the next one on the calendar. And if you don't, even if the meeting went great, even if they said, hey, we're ready to, like, yes, let's set up that next step, and send me your avails and we'll do it. Like, from my experience, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well, almost every single time, like, it's still going to take multiple follow-ups before you actually get it on the calendar. Sometimes you never get it on the calendar, right? Because you don't know if they're saying that just to, like, yes you, and then they end up getting busy, um, or what. So when you have their attention, which we know is difficult to get, makes such a big difference when you get the next meeting on the calendar. I'll just give you a quick example. So I had 3 or 4 meetings this week, prospect meetings. 3 of them were with prospects. Well, I was going to say 2 of them because one of them, the guy was going on paternity leave, so I couldn't set it up if I wanted to. But 2 of them, one of them, like, they both, I would say, equally successful in the sense that, like, they were and there was real interest and a real need. One of them, before the meeting ended, I got a demo on the calendar, which is what I just came off of. The other one, I waited too long, and the clock ran out, and they said, send me the avails. I've already sent over a follow-up and I haven't received a response yet. I already had the demo with the other one. And so that deal is progressing a lot faster. When you don't get the meeting on the calendar, then it stalls usually. It's going to take several follow-ups. That's just a part of the job because people are busy. They have other priorities. So that it starts with trying to get it on the calendar before, even if it's a little uncomfortable, it makes a huge difference to say, hey, great. So like next steps are a demo. Like, do you have some time next week? I don't know if you could pull up your calendar. I could pull up mine. And then trying to do it right then and there makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I will. I'm so glad you said that because I learned from a teammate over here. I mean, I've always tried to do that, but there was a young woman who we coordinate with and wise beyond her years. And we had a credit union client on, and we finished the first presentation. There was clearly a lot of interest there, and she would not let her off the call until she had the date and the time. And then we did that twice now. So we're up to meeting 4, which is set for next week. So it's been a big eye opener for me where, back in my day, it was send me your avails. And then we ping pong back and forth 4 times. And then all of a sudden the month has passed and we don't even know what we talked about. So you outline a very, in step 6, you outline a very methodical follow-up system. Can you break down some of those key principles there? Because I think that stood out to me, and I think will really stand out to the listeners because I know it's really working for you.
Sure. So let's say you don't get that meeting on the calendar, which sometimes it's completely out of your hands. Sometimes it's like, all right, I need to check somebody else's calendar. Like you can't get it every single time. You do your best, but sometimes you just won't be able to. And so the follow-up methodology is one where try to follow up as soon as possible after the meeting. While you have their attention, while you have their interest, the longer the time goes, the less likely you are to get it on the calendar. And so, as soon as possible, if it's within an hour and you can follow up, then great. Check your calendar immediately after the meeting and then follow up with those avails at the top of your email to try to get it on the calendar. And then from there, like I'll send a quick recap of our conversation. What are the key areas of value? If there were questions that I couldn't answer in the meeting, then obviously you need to do your due diligence. Always follow up with that information. I think the name of the game is speed and being very focused. Once you've uncovered their core needs, what's most important to them, then that should be the focus of your follow-up. That should be the focus of the rest of the sales cycle. Once you've uncovered how you can help them, what is most important to them, because that's ultimately going to move the needle. If you can't help with their core priority, then there's a good chance the deal will stall. So it's a matter of sending over the follow-up as soon as possible, making it clear that you're trying to get it on the calendar, and then quick recap, any follow-ups that you hadn't discussed, always tailored to their most important needs. You don't get a response, then you could wait a day or two, follow up again, and again, reiterate why it's important that they set up that follow-up meeting based on their needs that they told you about. Like, I'll just give you a quick example. Let's just say a client said that they were interested in, it was they were hoping to expand these capabilities, and your tool enables them to do that because they're trying to offer more support and service for their clients or what have you. Then you would say, like, great, would love to get this on the calendar so that you can start offering these services to your clients come 2026, and there's no delays. And so, always focus on the most important needs, reiterating the why behind like what they said was valuable to them. And then you just continue to follow up. And that's the main focus. Mix in value. So if you find articles, case studies, anything like that, well, that could be valuable to them, provide it. That will be much more effective than just a traditional, like just checking in or circling back. For your own needs, try to start it with something that will be valuable to them. Always provide times in their time zone to choose from, and then mix in phone calls. If it's like been a week, they've answered 3 or 4 emails, send over if you have their number, give them a call. Chances are they won't answer. Leave a voicemail, follow up with an email. Do what you have to do to get their attention. If they've committed to setting up the follow-up, it's still incumbent on you to get it on the calendar, and you need to do whatever it takes. Be persistent. if you truly believe that you can help, and that's the job of the salesperson.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we can talk to Andrew all day about these things, but we want to keep these concise for the listeners. So when we're going to advance, so we've got really in step 5. Well, there's the meeting preparation we went through. The sales meeting part 1 is a diagnosis, was figuring out what is the challenge, right? That went in the prep, and then part 2 is the prescription. So you're going to set up that demo meeting and whatnot, and then when we're going to move forward with our next conversation, will be following along in the book, which has been fantastic, is some advanced meeting strategies that you share in chapter 7, and then progressing the sale, because we want to actually get towards the closure of all we're doing. You'll probably have written 2 more books by the time we get there.
Yeah.
So a couple of quick rapid fire questions, Andrew, to as we close out here, because our listeners are so engaged with you. So in quick fashion, you're such a voracious reader, as am I, what is your favorite sales book other than your own that you're reading right now?
Yeah, I'll say the one that was most impactful on me, which is The Go Giver by Bob Berg, which I know that you've either read recently or yeah, it's a great book. I'll give it, I attribute it to changing my mentality that I described earlier, from trying to sell people, to convince people, to persuade people, to trying to help people. Changing that mentality made a huge impact on my career, because of the fact that you don't need a contract to do your job as a salesperson. You just need to find more ways to help. And if you can truly provide value and you can truly help, then you're being productive. That is our job. And so it changes everything the way I approach my meetings. Everything has changed once I realized that the job of the salesperson is really to help, as opposed to trying to persuade somebody or influence somebody, manipulate them, right? It just changes the mentality. And I think that's what also helps build trust.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I am in sync. I'm going to say a little bit about the Go Giver series in the close, but I'll ask you another question. Since the name of the show is Owning the Goal, what does that? And it's not looking for you patting the show on the back, but what does owning the goal mean to you on a professional and a personal basis?
So I would say this: the sales job it's long and it's hard, right? We have goals that were provided at the beginning of the year. But you know, those are long-term goals. How you get there is your daily habits and your priorities. So everything that we do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, of the prospecting, the research, the value that we're delivering, the meetings, demos, the proposals, all of that contributes to the ultimate goal. So when I think about owning the goal, I'm not thinking about it necessarily on the let me try to hit my sales quota, because I understand that in order to get that, you need to put in all of the daily work. And so how that starts is by having daily goals, right? It's let me try to accomplish 1 or 2 things each day that will move me closer to the ultimate goal. And so I know at times it can be very challenging when we as salespeople are reaching out to people that, they have other priorities. We have to interrupt their days. And we could spend all day reaching out and not get a single response. And I stopped looking at that as a failure of a day and started looking at it from the perspective of each day. Even if I reached out to people all day and I didn't receive a single response, I'm contributing to my sequences. And the hard work that you put in today will usually pay off 3 months down the road. And this was reiterated over this past week when I was at the conference. I made a joke to somebody and I said, it seems like every time I'm out of office, I end up closing deals. I'm like, maybe I'm more valuable when I'm not working. But then I realized, it's the reason for that is because the daily work pays off down the road. So it's because of all the work that I put in for the last 3 months that ultimately came to fruition when I closed the deal, and not because I wasn't working that day. It's like it's a sequence. You have to put in the work now, and you'll reap the rewards later.
Oh, I love that. So near and dear to my heart. I said the exact same thing. We come from the same place. First off, there's two closing comments on that. So we're both fans of John Wooden books, who was the most winningest coach in UCLA history, 18 championships in a row or something like that. He had so many interesting tactics, but one was he never allowed his players to look at the scoreboard because you've done all the work that's actually going to get you there. So I think that's fantastic. And I love the books you're going through. Oh, thank you so much for bringing such clarity and energy to this conversation. What I loved about today's episode that I want for the listeners, because it is about them, is that it reminds us that this intro meeting isn't just a step in the sales process. It is the moment of truth. I call it the Super Bowl every time. If you're into football, the way you prepare, connect, and follow up says everything about you as a professional and a person as you are. And Andrew is a fine one, both personally and professionally, I can attest. So I also want to give you another quick personal thank you, Andrew, because thanks to you, I've now connected with the two authors of the Go Giver book series, John and Bob. And just this week, and I feel like I'm stargazing, basically, that they both wrote me back and they listened to the episode that I did about their book series. And I'm going to have Bob on the show next week, and also hopefully as a recurring guest. And then I'm going to interview John and his lovely wife, Anna, for the Go Giver Marriage, which I'm using with my soul right now. So it's all because of you that I read that book, and I thank you so much for it. And I would also encourage people to check out Andrew's book, Top Sales Producer. It's also on Audible. That was a labor of love that he did for us all. And the Sales Marathon, which is just a great fable that can really inspire your day. So if you found value in this episode, and we hope you did, take 5 seconds right now to follow, rate, or subscribe to Owning the Goal, or to Andrew Barbuto. He has Facebook pages and YouTube pages and Spotify pages. We'll put the links down in the show notes, as well as his own website, wherever you are listening. It really helps more people discover both of us and the show, and it helps keep the community growing because we want to provide value to you. So thank you so much once again, Andrew, for number 4. And with that, I'm Brian McFarland. And remember, the real win isn't closing the sale, it's opening the relationship. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep owning your goals. And while you're owning your goals, learn about yourself during the process. Thank you so much again. And we'll have you on for episode number 5 before the end of the year. Thanks, Andrew.